Buenas. My name is Diego, and this is the You Live Where podcast. I've been an expat for 10 years now, and it's been the best 10 years of my life. I feel that for me to be able to explain to you my lifestyle or how it is we do what we do, I would have to have conversations with expats, people who own homes overseas, or people who have been traveling for a really long time. So that's what I'm going to do. What I'm looking to give you is the experience, kind of like riding a roller coaster. I want you to tell me how it felt. I'm sure we'll discuss how long the line was and the ticket prices, but I want that experience. I want to know what it was like. So this week, I'm having a conversation with a great friend of mine. His name's Matt. He was from New York, opened a restaurant here in Nicaragua, and then had to go back. So plenty of different perspectives, and it's a good one. So enjoy. What's up, brother?
Let's do it.
Yo, man, thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on the show, man. This is really cool. We've got some history. We got a lot to go over here.
Right.
All right, so let's start at the beginning, man. When did you think of owning or even doing something like this internationally? When did this come as an idea?
I first came to Nicaragua in 2007. I used to travel. I had a bunch of surf buddies, and we would always go to Costa Rica. And then one year, it was crowded, Costa Rica. You go down there, you just see Americans everywhere. One of my buddies was like, "Hey, why don't we check out Nicaragua?" He said, "I found this place, Los Cordones, online. Like, why not give it a shot?" We're like, "Okay," and it was a little sketchy. I remember thinking, like, isn't there a war there? Like, what's, I had to go online and check it out. It was, so we were like a little hesitant, but, we came and, it took a few days to even get used to it because this is nothing around. Like when we go on surf trips, we're Americans, we go out, you want to have a place nearby to get a hamburger.
So you're saying here, you came
to Los Cordones. We were
2007. There's fucking nothing here.
Right.
Yeah.
This place was much different back then. There was none of the cast of characters were here yet. There were a few people.
Right.
It was different, but not very different. We can get to that later on. But so anyway, I had a great week, surfed, eventually got into it. Like, wow, this takes you a few days to sort of like catch on to what it's all about. And there were great waves. And back then I was just like all about surfing. It's like the only thing I cared about. And then a friend of mine, me and another guy, stayed longer than everybody. We stayed like 5 extra days. And, we got to know Isaac. He drove us around. And then he gave us his elevator pitch about the property, and we were like, and so we went all in. Like we came home, we put down a deposit, bought a lot. It was just like total impulse buy. Okay. Stupid. I had no money, he had no money. Like what were we thinking? It was like, but a lot of people did that too. Right. A lot of people that invested there. So
what were you thinking, man? What captivated you? What made you invest there?
We just had this awesome feeling about this place. Like okay. I never going to Costa Rica. I never felt that. I never felt like, I want to live here. Okay. But something about this place was like, wow, we could really do this, And Isaac was a good salesman. So we went all in, and also I met my future wife, Anna. She worked at Los Cordones, right?
Oh, okay. And so you went on that trip?
Yeah. So we spent the week. She didn't speak a word English. I didn't know any Spanish. And we would sit there at the bar and we had this translation book, and we would go back and like scribble on a piece of paper and have these conversations. So we stayed in touch. And, I went back every year, got to know her better. And I would stay with her at her place, up in San Diego. Like you've been there, right?
Okay, yeah.
It's off the road. I mean, it's
that's real Nicaraguan.
Yes, that is without doubt Nicaraguan. So
it's not a tourist thing at all.
No, there was no electricity. No, there was electricity. Kind of just we'd go out a lot, but no running water, no Wi-Fi, any of that stuff. So I would come back every year to visit her, and. We paid off our lot and stuff, but then the reality hit after a couple of years. Like we can't buy a home. Like we started talking prices like 100, 200,000. Like I don't know what. I was like suddenly it was like I don't know what's gonna happen. So then Anna and I got married in 2013. A couple of years later, she came to the States, and we always talked about maybe moving back there. just it was always sort of
this area.
Yeah, right, to Nicaragua,
Right,
somewhere
right,
in Nicaragua. And then in 2016, we were taking care of my mother, right? She was sick. She passed away. And then it kind of just, I had nothing left keeping me on Long Island, And I was always the type, I was a summer person. I loved the heat. I hated the cold. Just imagine living in this tropical paradise. I always did have that dream, and it didn't work out with Finca del Mar, right? But so we came down in 2000. What was it, 16? It was the first time I met you, and we actually went to San Juan del Sur. We were looking at properties, and there was a restaurant for sale that we checked out. But we asked around, and it just wasn't the right deal. People were like, "Don't buy a restaurant here," and it just, we were kind of like, "All right, that didn't work out." And we came back here, and one day we were walking down the beach, and we saw this lot, which was just nothing but sand and almond trees, right?
Yeah,
there was nothing
here.
Yeah. There was a rancho that was kind of like
dilapidated. It was all beat
and there
up,
was
right?
that bathroom that was falling apart. But there was a sign that said for rent, se vende, and a phone number. So, and then we were like, what's this place? Mind the Gap. And I came over there, I talked to you, you gave me the rundown of that. And then you mentioned, you're like, yeah, I'm getting, I think we were looking for food. You were like, I'm going to get a restaurant. I'm trying to bring somebody in here to run a restaurant here. We're like, oh, okay. And I didn't really think about anything at the time. But then after we went home, we called the number for the property, and it was within our range, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, we could never afford that.
Yeah. Dead ass on the beach, too.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So we were like, you know what? We could buy that place. And then, that guy Diego said he needed somebody to run the restaurant. Like, we could do that. And, like, it was pretty much, I sent you a message. And
so the wheels started turning.
Yeah. And just like that, it was happening. And, after my mom passed away, it was like, what am I doing on Long Island? My brother didn't move. He didn't live there anymore. My dad died years earlier. And it was just like, it's time, and I didn't really give it much
calling.
Yeah, right. It seemed like this was a good plan. I always knew a restaurant down here because there was nothing, if like you have a little grill where you're making like burgers, French fries, chicken wings, but I had burritos, whatever else. Yeah, there was like 10 items on the menu. Like I knew that would, and Nicaragua had grown at that point where there was like a community here now.
Oh, yeah.
There were plenty of expats, and there really wasn't any of that when I first came here. So I was like, I knew it was a great idea. We put it. 6 months later, we moved. It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
And we showed up in December, and I remember, getting the kitchen, right, and getting that all going, and the menu. I just got ideas off of Pinterest. I was like, what do I want? What do people want? Like when I go to a little, a burger, chicken sandwich, wings, fry, things like that. And I just learned how to make them. I wasn't a cook, I was a web designer, right? But I figured that out. We put together a menu, and we hit it, right? Like just remember opening night, you had Summer Rain play, right? And we did like over 100 plates.
Yeah,
it was like one of our busiest nights. Yeah, we're like, this is gonna be great. Like it's gonna be it. Yeah, every night wasn't like that, but like we made enough. Like it was hard work, but we made enough. We survived.
So okay. So you picked Nicaragua because of your wife and because you've been here on a few surf trips. You picked the area because the numbers were right, everything was right. When you decided to come from New York to here, how was that? How did you do that? Did you sell everything, move here? Did you pack everything up, move here? Did you put things in storage? How'd it go?
It's a lot of work. Getting rid of all your shit is a lot of work. Like we just had a 1-bedroom apartment, but we had so much stuff because we took stuff, like when my mom passed away, we took all the things that she had, all the furniture. So we had to get rid of all that. That was kind of tough because it was sentimental, it was like my mom's stuff, and I would sell it on Facebook Marketplace and people would come by. But it's a lot of work getting rid of all your stuff, even down to the last few boxes,
All right.
And we did get a...
and you got rid of it? You didn't storage none of it?
No, we did. Okay. No, not storage, but we shipped a lot of our stuff.
Okay.
We had a couple of big pallets. You could rent space on a container, in a shipping container, right? Like a certain... we didn't have that much stuff, but we had a lot of stuff. I wouldn't. That's a bad idea. Like, anybody thinking of moving down here, I wouldn't do that because it costs like $5,000, and there's nothing anything you could get down here, right?
Yeah.
So for that money that I spend having it shipped, for $5,000, you can replace all that stuff.
I did the same thing. I sent it's called LCL shipping, which is limited container shipping. So if they like send 2 cars and they have 4 feet left, they give you that space, right?
Yeah.
And we fill that space with like pallets and shit, and we shot it down here. Cost me like $2,000 on that end, and then to handle this end was another $2,000. So you're right up in that end, that range.
Yeah, and so
a whole bunch of weights and
right,
things
like
things
heavy,
that when you're there, you're like, oh, but
right. And over the last 7 years, we've been bringing stuff back, So that's maybe it would have made more sense to put it in storage because obviously you never know what's going to happen, and like we weren't expecting like the whole country to explode, and then we can get into that, but it's kind of forced out of here.
Right.
And I'm like, oh great, I just moved everything down there.
Well, the thing is, you have the house
use some of that stuff. Yeah, so we did.
At least you have a place to put everything, right?
Right.
Okay, so then you shipped everything down here. Getting down here, man. So after you purchased the lot, so I'm assuming the wife helped out a lot with that, right? Like getting this done, was it difficult process
it was
for
easy.
you?
It was simple. We needed a lawyer. We had an attorney, and it's great about down here. We just asked somebody. It might have been Julie. We asked somebody. Yeah, we need a real estate attorney. Oh, use this guy, right?
Okay.
So it's like that with anybody you need. You ask. Oh, there's always that guy.
I got a guy.
Right.
I got a guy.
So we got him. They handled it. It was simple, those two worked it out. Then I got a call one day. Oh yeah, it's all done. Here's the money here's the information to wire the money.
Okay,
and we did it.
So it was a simple transaction.
Yeah, very easy.
And the build of the place, man. How did that happen? How did this? Because your house is gorgeous. It's a beautiful, well-built property right on the water, man. This place is stunning. So tell me, how did this come about?
Yeah, well, so my wife luckily had 5 brothers who were all in construction.
Okay.
They all knew how to build a house, right? So it was like, I was lucky, right? So they were here, and we, worked it out.
Family built the house.
Yeah, family built the house.
And they did everything as far as the logistics, the material, fucking everything. They handled it for you.
Yeah, I remember that whole time. We would come down here, we would check on it, we'd be over there working all day, and then run back here.
Yeah, I remember.
And then sometimes we'd have to run out, go buy supplies.
Was it stressful for you?
Not really,
While they were doing all that?
You would imagine it should have been, but being down here is just like, how can you be stressed on the beach, right? Like, it seems like it would have been stressful, but no, it was fun, exciting, watching the foundation and the walls and then the second floor. Yeah, it was exciting as hell,
Oh, that's awesome.
Something.
So let me ask you a question. What is a perceived, like, what was different for you living here? Like, you had this dream in your head in New York, like, I'm going there, I'm going to do this. What was different from you than when you dreamed than when you got here and the reality struck?
You know what? Most of it was like what I thought, I mean, I had a lot of experience because I spent a lot of time here.
Right.
It would come down to, so I knew what Nicaragua was like, and a lot of it was like there weren't really a lot of surprises. It was as awesome as I thought it would be. I mean, there's some things that are a drag. Like it's a little backwards. Anytime, like getting things registered, like a car or your residency, that's kind of a pain in the neck. Everything is like red tape, right? So it took us like multiple days driving around Managua to get the car registered. In the United States, all that stuff is simple. You do it all online, right? Down here, it's like massive amounts of paperwork and things like that. And, but like everything else was cool. I mean, know what you're getting into. But who could have seen that coming, I mean.
No, nobody.
Right?
At that time, during that period of time in 2017, it felt like 50s America. Whatever business you open or do, it will do well. Like,
everybody was talking about Nicaragua. This is the time it's growing, and it was really, and it's back to that now. I think,
I think so too. Yeah, I think we're finally getting on that cusp again. I think that changes today happen so much more rapidly than they did 50 years or 20 years ago because of the phone. Like, your government could be sitting there telling you any type of nonsense it wants on the news, like, don't go here, it's crazy. But then you look at Bob, and Bob's on the waves out front having a good time. Hey, I'm in Nicaragua chilling, and that changes everything. Yeah. So I think that has a really big flux with it. Yeah, no doubt. So what was difficult, would you say, when you first got here?
You know, like, all right, so wait, you know, setting everything up, we had a lot of work to do, you know, because we're building a house and a business at the same time. You know, managing that was tough, right? Like, we were, I seemed like 2, 3 days a week we were driving to Managua, you know, back and forth, back. You know, we had to find a car. Like, I had to do a lot in a short amount of time, you know. So that was a lot of work, but you know, that's part of it. Like anybody that moves down here, you're gonna have a busy.
You're gonna have to get it in
few months getting all the things you need, you know, to set. And you know, we were doing a lot, like starting a business and building a house, you know. So if like, you know, somebody was coming down here and buying a house, that would be a lot simpler, obviously, you know.
So as that perspective of having that business on the beach for the while that you did, good memories?
Oh, the best. Yeah, I mean, that was the best year of my life. Like, it was amazing. I mean, you know, you had the workaways. So like at any moment there was like what, 10, 12?
6 to 8 people
right,
living there.
okay,
yeah.
and then somebody would leave, and then the next day somebody would replace them. You know, so you had dudes from South Africa, Australia, England, like all over Germany, all around, all these personalities and all these dudes sitting around in board shorts in the rancho, and then the girls, you know, the same thing, in their bathing suits running around and. It was just so funny, you know, just being around a bunch of 20, you know, somethings.
It used to blow my mind. The rancho used to remind me of the UN. Like, I used to go up there, dude. There used to be like people from all walks of life just sitting there chilling, man.
And everybody got along, you know. There wasn't, like, you know, and they were living in a tight space in that hostel.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone got along, and they were from all walks. You know, there were some people, you know, a lot of them like would just kind of like, you know, in their 20s, didn't really have anything going on. Maybe going to school, maybe working.
Right.
But then there were some other people, some older people who were professionals and just traveling around and had jobs to go back to. You know, but everybody, it got on well. So it was like just so interesting, you know, to every week be work. And we had to work, you know, they worked with us and the rest of us served the food and stuff. So, you know, we had
meeting
to work.
New people, right?
Yeah. So it was like, there's always so much going on. And I used to, you know, I'd come down here and take a shower because back at our home, there was, you know, our only shower was, we had the well, and I would crank up the 5-gallon bucket of water. And at the beginning, the first month, I'd be dead by the time, because it was like 30 feet. I had to bring it up. After a couple months, I was like, one arm, the other arm, like it was my workout. And then we go in this little shack, you know, you take a Tupperware bowl and just dump it on, you know, at the end of the day. And that was like the greatest. Oh, God, I look forward to that freezing cold water, you know, on me, and then you soap up, and then but then, like, during the day I would come. We used your Wi-Fi because we had no internet up the road. And then I'd jump in the shower, I'd take a break, go out, go surfing, come back, you know, cook some meals, people coming in, and you know, we were making an, you know, the idea worked. Like the restaurant was that worked, and then after, you know, we shut, you know, Kelly took over, similar menus, and now he's doing well. So
it's just the area, man. There's that market. There's that hole in our market that needs to be filled.
Right.
There's still plenty of space for even more ideas. But
definitely. So I mean, the idea was solid. Just, you know, when all that stuff happened, the uprising, you know, everybody left, right? So our business was built around
people,
right? Mostly expats and tourists, you know, people with money. Like originally we thought, we'll you know, be a restaurant for locals, but it really wasn't. You know, we didn't get a lot of Nikas coming in.
This area isn't so much.
It's mostly gringos, Canadians, people with, you know, had a little bit of money to spend. You know. And
so let me ask you, after living the dream for a while, and then, because your experience is pretty unique, you guys had to go back to California, you know, with what happened and everything. And not only did you leave Nicaragua, which is this crazy lifestyle that we were living and everything, but then you went to a state that's not even your home state. You went to California to try this all out again. Was that a hit, man? Was that a culture shock? Was that a kick?
That was harder than moving here.
All right,
adjusting to California. Well, you know, California is like, it sounds great, you know, it's a little hard to adjust there. Californians are a little strange. Like, they're not as like openly people always say, oh, you have a hard time making friends in California, but every time I visited, people were really friendly. But they're kind of friendly on the surface, and then like a little further back, they're not so friendly, right?
Okay.
They kind of New York is the opposite. Everybody's has their wall right set up there, so
Sure.
they might be really rude for somebody you might hate when you first met. Might turn out to be a great friend, right?
Over time, sure,
Yeah,
sure, I
right.
get that.
It's kind of the opposite in California. And then just trying to get back, I was like, okay, I got to get back into web design. I figured that'll be easy. I got like 20 years experience, but the market for my industry was I mean, it really crowded out there. So I went on so many interviews, and being out of work for that year was kind of like tough to fill in on my resume,
Yeah,
so I'm competing with like 20-year-olds. I'm 50 competing with 20-year-olds. So it was tough. Like at first I was door dashing, which was fun, because it was like, and I got a job in a restaurant right away. And I was like, somebody told me about DoorDash. Like, oh, great. I can start working tomorrow while I'm, looking for jobs in web design. And it was great because I got to drive around and sort of figure out the area, the lay of the land.
Okay, yeah,
figure out like where are the
Like
good restaurants around here,
Sure.
and just sort of get a feel of the area I lived in. But yeah, it was tough. Yeah, and it was expensive, and I had invested all my money here. I had nothing, So it was scary too, and I was going through like kind of like withdrawal from Nicaragua, like.
You think that high,
Maybe like regretting it at the same time, wishing why aren't I there still, And I probably could have stayed if I planned it out, if I really thought it through. But I mean, you need income, right? That's one of the things that I think people underestimate when they just pack up their stuff and move, right? Like, well, we'll figure it out when we get there, right? They come here sight unseen, right? Never been to Nicaragua, and then just move their entire families and lives here and think they're going to just I don't know, make bracelets and jewelry and sell it by the beach. No, you need a financial plan. And
that's good. That's a good hit.
Something
good hit.
Like I'm actually more prepared if I move back. I work online. I do web design. So I have a bunch of clients. I make enough money. I could move back and we could survive fine, and yeah. So back then they would say like if 2,000 a month, more than enough to survive here, and I think today probably the same. Yeah,
no, definitely.
Right?
If you're making $2,000 a month in Nicaragua,
you're I think you're going to do well.
Well, if you own your home,
right?
If you own your home, you own your car, you're already established. At $2,000 a month, you're flying, forever.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're making 2,500, 3,000, you're living like a king.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you should have some kind of, economy-proof job. Like our business was dependent on Nicaragua, as we found out. That fell through all the crazy stuff that happened, and that was it because our business was built around gringos who were no longer here. So I mean, if you have an online job, perfect.
Well, that's what we fell back on immediately.
Right.
Like immediately after that happened, and we said we were going to rough it out. We had to find online work.
Yeah.
And Morgan and I, for many years, I was dibbling and dabbling in different things until she and her, both of us at the same time, and she found something official that just took off.
Yeah, right. That was a good move. She was lucky that she got that job. And
she was very lucky. Fortunate.
Yeah. So I mean that would be
so going back after being an expat and living this carefree, chill lifestyle for so long, you think going back was really hard? Huh?
It was, definitely.
How did you maintain this when you went back?
It's tough. It's hard. It's hard to find, people who we went through a lot of caretakers. We'd have somebody come and stay here at night. We didn't have a full-time person living here. But we went through a lot of people, just like they just didn't work out for one reason or another. It's hard to find, good caretakers of your property, and we still haven't. Years later, we still haven't found. Ruth,
what do you predominantly do with the property when you're not here?
Well, I mean, we do rent it, so we have a Airbnb page, word of mouth. There's a sign out front. We rent it to mostly Nicas, And, I mean, we've rented it a few times on Airbnb to out of country tourists who come here. that's that's worked out most of the time. But those people are expecting, like, this is rustic, right? This isn't like Holiday Inn, right?
Yeah.
You got to be ready for that. Most
So
of
you
them are.
believe the Airbnb people show up with a certain expectation that's difficult to fulfill?
We've had some reviews. We're like, well, there was dust and bugs. It's like, yeah, well, look around.
We're in the jungle.
Yeah. So some people, they expect a little more. Other people are totally cool with it. And Nika's, they love it, but they'll bring, we list it max 6 people, but they'll bring 6 plus 10 others, right? So they're like, well, we're gonna have 6 of us, but we're gonna bring there'll be 8 or 10 others coming for the weekend, So they bring their whole family and friends, and they sleep, outside everywhere. So things get broken, things go missing. That's so you just gotta hide, make sure anything that you value, just lock it up somewhere, put out, silverware and dishes that are rental friendly, right?
So if you're going to rent the house, build it for such, like have it set up as such, because things will happen.
You definitely have to at least put all your personal shit away.
All right.
So definitely. We have a bodega out there now where we can lock stuff up.
In dealing with the people that you say look after your home when you're not here, you said it's tough. And what's the toughest part of it?
People don't, they don't get back to you. They don't do what they're supposed to do. A lot of it is watering the plants, right? And we get pictures. Ruth would come by, and his sister, and take pictures of dying plants.
This doesn't help.
You're supposed to, he's like, well, she's not my boss. Like talking about Ruth, right? Like, so you'd have some guy here, like, she can't tell me what, oh God, what. Like, she is your boss. Well, so it would just be a nightmare. People wouldn't be around when you need them. You call them and they don't answer.
Missing.
Yeah. So it was tough. It was tough to find the right people. But so we really, Ruth takes care of it now. We just been lucky. There's not a lot of crime down here. We've never had anything really stolen. We had a bunch of block out there. There was like 8 to 10 pieces that was gone. I think I know who did it. We won't talk about that. But yeah, building materials is like worth its weight in gold down here. Okay. So you leave that stuff around, whereas we found out it might just disappear. But things like chairs and hammocks, anybody can come up the beach and just grab that stuff at night. We've never had a problem.
Yeah, we've been actually extremely fortunate as well. Do you know what I mean? Right, a couple houses over, I've never had any problems here all the year. I've been here 10 years now. I've never had a problem on the beach. Very lucky. All right, so wow, there's what would you change? Would you change anything? Because your story is a lot. You came, you went, we have.
Yeah, I wouldn't build we were just talking about this last night. I would have built a smaller house,
on the beach.
Yeah. This is 2 floors. A lot of time during the year, it's just too hot upstairs, right? Like, we don't spend a lot of time in the living room, You're outside. Really, all you need is a space to sleep. Air conditioning's nice, so you want to have like a nice airtight room where you can have air conditioning, place to cook, obviously bathroom, but you don't need all this space. It's nice to have, we're on the 2nd floor up here. I can see the beach and everything. That's nice, but I would have built much smaller.
Smaller,
and you build a bigger outside area. We have the rancho now. You spend all your time outside, so make a nice, comfortable outside area. Better you invest in a rancho, kind of like Larry has. You have an upstairs, then you can have a little space underneath it. That's where you're going to be most of the time, Right? So you just need a place to sleep, but mostly, that's one thing I would do over again. People always say, "Oh, I'd love to go retire, live in a house on the beach." Think a beach does have its drawbacks. It's
we were talking about.
It's not quiet, right? Like, that ocean at high tide, it's like a freight train, But that's great. It helps me sleep.
It does.
You can't complain about
that.
The sound.
That I like the sound part of it. I actually do. I'm with that. I do like that part.
The salt air sucks,
you're
vulnerable. Yeah, the salt air, right?
Sucks.
Not good.
Yeah.
Metal things tend
Destroyed
to, like, not
TVs, countless phones, computers,
you gotta be you gotta really
radios,
take care of that stuff.
fridge, all that shit goes so quickly.
I would, if we sold this place, I would move some. We have property up the road. I would move there, quiet little place. Try to build up high somewhere where you get a nice breeze. Quiet. It's okay to live a few miles away from the beach. It's nice to be on the beach. I can go surfing anytime. I can watch the sunset. It's just nice. I come out in the morning, with my cup of coffee and take walks. That's nice to have. But no, I think there's other benefits of moving. It's more humid on the beach too.
God, it's exponentially hotter on the beach.
It's a little
that sun
warmer.
hits that sand and reflects on
when
you,
that water warms up and it gets up into the high 80s. The heat comes off of it and the humidity. Like if I go over and hang out with Ed and then come back, I could feel the temperature.
The heavy of it.
Yeah, right. You feel
Yeah.
the moisture in the air. So yeah, there's something to be said about living a little further back, and higher up maybe. So maybe that the next thing we do down the road.
I'm on a similar page. I'd love to stay on water because I need water. I'm just a guy. I like the water, but I'm thinking like a lake.
Lake would be nice too. You want to be like, we can't have a well here on the beach either, right? Because you dig down, it's all salt water.
Yeah, you go deep enough.
So that's something to think about. We have a tank. We have water trucked in. We spend It's about $50, and it lasts about a month.
Okay.
Using it like not sparingly. Like when I do dishes, I just have the water running. My wife's always turn the water off.
She's
like, then we'll clean the plates, and then I don't like I take showers. It feels great. I don't rush it. So we get about a month. So it's about $50 a month for water. But it's another thing. If you build inland a little more, you can have a well.
Yeah.
And you never have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So those are some things to think about.
That's definitely true.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if somebody says to you, hey, Matt, I'm thinking about moving to Nicaragua. I'm thinking about doing similar little gig, man. Put a little house on the beach and get out there. What would your advice be?
Well, I'd ask, like, what do you do for a living? What do you?
Make sure you got money.
Yeah, make sure you have an income. Like I said, preferably do something online where you're making USA money, right? Because you need, like I said, you don't need a fortune, but $2,000 a month, right? Like that's the goal,
we'll say.
Yeah, I think that's the minimum. But don't come down here thinking like you're going to figure it out and offer, people do, right? They just come down here and they have a plan, or else you will be going home within a year, like we did. We had a plan, but the unthinkable.
Yeah,
we didn't see that.
Your situation was lottery win.
We didn't see that coming
backwards. You know what I mean?
So, definitely have a plan. Visit first. Spend a little time down there. See if the climate is for you. It takes a while to get used to it. It's hot year round. It's not for everybody. There's insects. There's critters. Be ready for that. So a lot of people come and go, right? Like we've seen that.
Yes.
So and have a fallback plan if it doesn't work out. Know where you're going to go back in the United States, because we had no idea. You were all in here and then all in there. Hard to find an apartment out of country. Like when down here, like trying to get an apartment in the United States, especially now, it's even more competitive. We got an apartment sight unseen, showed up. Luckily, everything worked out. But you prepare for that. You might not make it, and it might not be your choice. You might come down here and love it, but you had something like what happened to us. It's sort of like, really give us no choice.
Have to zig when you wanted to zag.
Yeah, you got to be prepared for.
Do you think in going through all of this, it was living here, how had it impacted you, man? Going back to the States, viewing things after living in Nicaragua for a year?
Well, I think it gave me more confidence. Like there was a lot of things that I didn't think I could do that I knew now that I could do. I had spent being a web designer. I just sat behind a desk all day. Down here, I was, working with my hands, right? Like picking up stuff, those water bottles. I got to the point where I'd carry one in each hand, walk
the 5-gallon
right.
bottles.
There was like kind of like a workout. Same thing with the propane tanks, carrying that thing. Like so I was in great shape. Like when I came back to the States, I was like, ripped. Like I had no fat left on my body. So that's, you eat good, right? The food down here is all so much better. You're not eating like everything just
It's all natural,
pumped
it's not
up
processed.
with like back in the States. So yeah, definitely healthier, more fit. You're more active down here. So
But you feel that impacted you deeply for how you view the world?
yeah,
Especially going back to America?
I think so. And then and the time, it's so weird right now because the United States has gotten kind of like sort of gone off the rails. We don't have to get into the whole political discussion, but I mean, it's not so different now. But yeah, I mean, it was an amazing experience. I went through a lot. Like, do I regret it? What a huge mistake. We spent our life savings and all that work to move down here. We had to go back, but I've come to grips with that. I made some great friends. I would never change it. It was awesome, and I would come back. We've talked about it every time we come down here and visit. We always talk about what if we came back. I was just talking to my brother the other day. He's like, "Why would you leave there? Like, go back to your 1-bedroom apartment in LA." I was like, I don't know.
Is this definitely impacting your decisions for your future? Are you still? Is this in the?
Yeah, I mean, it could, because I'm getting. I'll be 57 this year. I don't want to be like 70 when I retire. I'd like to retire, semi-retire, like, in my 60s while I'm still healthy and able. So who knows? I mean, it's definitely in the cards. It's like having a kid. Like, I'll do what's best for my daughter, right? Like, if this is the best decision for her, yeah, I would consider it. If not, maybe it isn't. We kind of have to sort of feel that out over the next year. She's going to start school this year, so we'll see how that goes. That changes everything. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah,
it's not just about us anymore. But I mean, yeah, I think it would be a good look. It's becoming tough in the United States. Like, California is really expensive, and I don't know how we're going to keep it up. Especially, I'm working hard now. I don't know how long I can keep that up. Like, putting in the effort and sitting in. I've been sitting in front of a computer doing web design for like over 20 years now. Kind of like I'm getting burnt out, on it,
Yeah.
and that's why, so we invested here. We have another business, like doing a little farm. So we'll see how maybe if that develops the right way. And
But you're still keeping some anchors we're keeping in Nicaragua.
Yeah. So that could be my, my fallback plan, sort of like a retirement, but, still earning an income, and then something that we could pass down to the kids, like in time, if we grow it,
Okay.
So yeah, that's yeah. I mean, Nicaragua, it never goes away. Like, we're like, it's like the mafia. We're in it for life. Like, there's no getting out alive. Like, there's no say, I'll never go back there. Yeah. Plus, my wife's, she likes the United States, and she's happy in California. Her brother's there now. So she has a good life there. But when she comes back here, she has family still here too, and she's always tempted. Starts thinking about, like, what if we moved back? But yeah. So I mean, the option is there.
The option's there.
Yeah.
All right, man. So yeah, I guess. Let's see. I guess that just about covers a lot, huh?
Yeah.
You got anything you want to shout out?
No, I would just say, for anybody, we're putting this out there, trying to get information out for people who are considering moving here. And I mean, look, it's safe. Like, even, we lived here during one of the worst times in the history of this country. But, out here, nothing really changes. And we were never really at risk here, right? Like, where we are, we're sort of off the
beaten back.
Yeah,
we're
right.
out of the way of everything.
We're at the end of the road, you know.
Yeah.
And as much as things changed between the first time I was here in 2007 and now, hasn't really changed that much, you know. They built a road. There's a few restaurants, you know, a few other things, but it really hasn't changed that much, you know.
Right.
Like, so there's more people. There's more of a community here. The community's great. You know, everybody helps each other, right? Like, I think, you know, the amount we've had a few people come through here that, you know, everybody fits in. Like when we were up at Kelly's or something, like, you know, everybody, oh yeah, I see people I haven't seen, and like it's great. It's like we're a family,
Right.
And a lot of good people with common interests move here. And we had a few bad apples come through, but rarely. I mean, maybe 1 out of 10, right?
Sure.
It's rare that somebody comes along and they just don't fit in. And, you know, like I said, people are super helpful. Whatever you need, like, you know, lawyer, doctor, dentist. Like, you know, I didn't know I'm going to go to a dentist. I was like scared. I got a Nicaraguan dentist. But the guy that you recommended me to, you know, he practiced in the United States, right? He speaks English. He's as good as any dentist I've had. So, yeah,
he's great. I love my dentist. He's awesome.
Right.
He's on the level.
I felt totally.
Everybody I've ever brought there, man, has had great experiences.
Right.
That's a great thing.
You know, the community helps you out. You just have to be cool, you know, don't be a dick, right? Like, be nice to everybody and try to fit in, you know,
right.
Embrace it, and they'll embrace you, you know. But as I say, it takes a certain type to move down here. You know, people like aren't pretentious, you know, and it's so diverse because it's like you got Grand Pacifica where, you know, people who move in there probably have a little bit more money than people like me. I'm not rich. Like I spent my life savings on this place, you know, and you get.
But you know what though, man? You got a lot going on for your life savings. This is a beautiful house right on the water.
Well,
like,
I mean, we did having family build it. You know, we still had to pay them.
No, there's ways to make this happen that probably saved you a few pennies.
We did get a bro deal, you know.
But bro, like, this is still look at this.
Yeah,
you pulled it off. I'll say you pulled it off.
And it is an investment, you know. I mean, it wasn't meant to be. It was meant to be our home, but you know, you don't have a lot of money. Like I hope if I needed to sell this place, I get some money back, you know. So, you know, I mean, if a tidal wave came through and wiped it, I wouldn't be happy, you know. Like, you know, so it is an investment, you know, and it's always here. Like we can always, you know, it can always come back. Right? We got a house waiting for us. So
it's a dope house, right, brother? Thank you so much, man. Thank you for everything. Excellent. Wow, Matt, incredible, man. Good stories as always. Nothing but positive vibes sent your way, brother. Love you to death. For the rest of you out there, I hope you enjoyed that episode. It was very informative. If there's any questions that you want me to ask my guests in the future, please just leave them in the comment and I'll get to it. Give me a like, a subscribe, and I hope to see you in 2 weeks.